Well, as you know, the people of this island province go to the polls on Monday to elect a new provincial government. It's been a reasonably quiet election campaign so far. The only poll that has been published suggests it's a close race between the governing Conservatives and the opposition Liberals. Well, joining us tonight to discuss the policies and the politics, what matters heading into Election Day, are the leaders of Prince Edward Island's 4 political parties. On my immediate left is the leader of the Conservative government, Premier and Conservative leader Pat Binns, Mr. Robert Giz, leader of the Liberal Party, Dean Constable, leader of the Island NDP, and the leader of the Prince Edward Island Green Party, Sharon Labchuk. And I'm delighted to have the 4 of you here. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Our format tonight is going to be very, very simple and straightforward. It is the same format we used recently in the province of New Brunswick. We are going to have 2 discussion periods between 8 and 9 minutes in length, followed by some brief closing comments from the party leaders. We have not discussed any specific topics or questions with the 4 party leaders tonight. I'm here to direct the discussion, if you will, but we've encouraged the party leaders to feel free to speak to each other and with each other, to interject if they think it's necessary, and I will do my best to keep the discussion on track so that you can follow it at home. And I want to begin with Premier Binns. Mr. Binns, when we called you about this discussion, it was your suggestion that we include the leader of the 4th party and the leader of the 3rd party. I wonder, why do you think all 4 party leaders should be represented in a forum like this?
Well, it is a race that has 4 parties in it, and I think that all segments of our society have a contribution to make. Certainly the Green Party brings some interesting ideas. At some point and somewhere they're going to form a government. I don't think it's going to be here in PEI yet, but they do have ideas that are worth debating. And similar, the NDP has had a struggle to get established here. But again, they brought ideas forward, things like kindergarten, which we have said, yeah, that's a good idea, we'll do it, we've got the money to do it.
Mr. Gibbs, what do you see as the role of the other parties? The party's not likely to form a government, or maybe not even likely to win a seat, we don't know. But what is their role?
I think everyone has a role when it comes to our democratic process. That's the wonderful thing about it, and especially here in Prince Edward Island, where we have the highest voter turnout in the whole country. We're typically above 80%. I think sometimes we get close to 90%. And regardless of which party you're from, Conservative, NDP, Green Party or Liberal Party, everybody's opinions matter, and that's what forms government decision making at the end, is by taking into account everyone's opinions. And I think
Mr. Constable, Ms. Labchuk, it seems very unlikely that your parties will win government on Monday, but tell me, Mr. Constable, what do you see as the role of the NDP in this campaign?
Well, the role in this campaign has been to make sure that the issues of Islanders got to the forefront, and we've been successful in that when it comes to the wages, when it comes to the issue of VLTs that Islanders want to see phased out of their province. So we've been able to carry those forward. In the past, we've been able to bring those right into the legislature when we had a seat, and in the future, when we have our seat there again, we'll be able to make sure
but bluntly, what's your best case scenario for Monday?
Well, is to have the voice of New Democrats and the voice of Islanders back in the legislature.
Ms. Labchuk, your best case scenario for the Green Party?
Well, we're a brand new party, so we don't have a long history of being a fringe party, and we're on a roll, frankly. So I see our role for this very first time out as to introduce Islanders to what is the Green Party and what is green politics, because it's very different from the old line parties. And in this election, I want to present the big picture, the visionary ideas, rather than specifics of budgetary, and policy. People need to know who we are, and we have to present the big picture for that initially. And
it's interesting that while I hear the leaders of the 2 traditional parties speak with great affection about the 3rd and 4th party, that neither of your parties has done anything to change the electoral system on the island to get these parties into the legislature. Why not? Why didn't you do something about that when you could have, Premier Binns?
Oh, I think everybody has the same opportunity. They can nominate candidates, they can fundraise, they can do all the things that traditional parties have done. But I want to, the NDP has had, they pushed some good issues. I think raising minimum wage, for example, has been a good thing. It's something that I agree with. The problem is we just can't do it unilaterally on PEI. I think we have to find a way to get regional cooperation on an issue like that so we can raise the minimum wage. If everyone in the region does it, then no one's in a non-competitive position. And I've used the lobster fishery as an example. Sure. If we work together there, it can happen.
But what about proportional representation, Mr. Giz? Are you prepared to change the system in the island to get the Green Party, get the NDP into the House?
That's something that we would have to do through a citizens' assembly. We went through a plebiscite a couple of years ago on proportional representation, but it was only one specific model. And the problem is, with one specific model, there's going to be people that are for and against. There was people that were for proportional representation, but were against just not that system that was brought forward. That's why I believe if we're going to look at it again, we need to have a citizens' assembly and make sure we get the input of all islanders.
Quickly, Mr. Constable.
Yeah, just on the proportional representation, it's often put that it's to get the NDP or the Green in. What we're really talking about is making sure that what the voters vote for happens in the legislature, and that's not been happening even in the last, what we saw in the last legislature. What Islanders voted for is not what they got.
Ms. Labchuk?
Yeah, I was very much involved in the plebiscite on PEI for proportional representation. I'm still involved in that and will be pushing very hard for Citizens Assembly. And this time, rather than the very tiny window we had to educate Islanders to lobby for this, I hope to see like a year like the other provinces are allocating for public education.
I want to get to what I think is the real issue in this election. Most elections are essentially referenda on whether to keep a government. It's questions that people ask themselves: is it time for change? Do we have someone to whom we can change? You've been Premier of Prince Edward Island for a long time, 3 full majority governments. What is there left for you to do? Why haven't you, with due respect, had enough?
Well, we're just getting started, Steve. I'm enjoying this job. I've got a vision for what PEI can achieve. PEI can achieve a lot of greatness. I mean, we wanted to boost the tourism industry, so we went after new airlines to come to Prince Edward Island. We wanted to boost the technology sector, so we built the Atlantic Technology Center. We wanted to strengthen our primary industries, so we said bioscience is going to be something we're going to do. We had to bring more jobs to PEI, so we promoted trade missions. I mean, these are visionary kinds of things. They're what I'm having fun at. It's building a strong province. Our job growth is one of the best in the country.
But how long is long enough? How long is long enough for any one man to be Premier?
One more term.
One more full term?
I've said one more term and I'm out of here.
What's wrong with that, Mr. Giz?
I think any political party, after a certain amount of time, you need rejuvenation. You need new ideas. We've seen a government over the last 11 years that has concentrated on golf courses, that has gone into elections and given out $14 million loans only 6 weeks before an election, secretly without telling Islanders, told Islanders that there was an $11 million deficit, when in fact it was a $125 million deficit. I've said all along we need a change in our mentality here. We need to put good government in front of politics.
You made many of these arguments last time.
No,
and Islanders didn't accept those arguments that it was time for change.
Because they weren't
Actually,
true, Steve.
a lot of them just came before the 2003 general election.
Fair enough.
Those are new
the
issues.
argument for change, however, was the argument you used last time.
No, actually, last time we didn't use the argument for change. This is really the first time that the Conservative Party has ever been in power for this long of a period of time. And I believe that now's the time that we start concentrating on health care, on education, on social programs, on tax relief, and get away from golf courses and patronage and those sort of things.
If you were to win on Monday, are you going to put a Frank McKenna clock on it? 10 years and you're gone?
I definitely will not be sitting here in 10 years looking for a 4th consecutive majority. If I am, you can ask me to leave the room.
Mr. Constable, is change the issue here? And if it is, which of these parties is the best vehicle for change if it isn't going to be the NDP?
It is about change, but if we want to see real change, we can't go back to the Liberals. I mean, 10 years ago, we remember why we voted them out. We remember all the things they were doing, the reason we kicked them completely out of at one point, almost completely out of the legislature. We remember what the Liberals did 10 years ago. So if we want real change, what we need is the voice of Islanders back in the legislature, a party that will really stand up for Islanders, and we've been that.
But just to pursue that argument, you acknowledge the NDP is not going to form a government in this province on Monday.
I mean, anything
so which
is
of these
possible,
parties
but
should
no.
form the government on Monday?
Well,
Are you for change with Mr. Giz or the status quo with Mr. Benz?
The only way we're going to get real change is to have New Democrats in there. I mean, either party governing, they're going to go back, if they're not kept under check, they're going to go back to the tactics they've employed in the past.
Ms. Labchuk, same question to you. Which of these parties, the parties that are able to win, should be in power on Monday?
That's a tricky question.
It is.
Well, from a Green perspective, all 3 parties are so much alike that you can find very little difference between them. But I know what you're saying. You want to pin me down. Which one of these guys do I want in? Well, there's not much difference between the 2 parties. But let's have a new face in government then, and let's say Robert Giz for Premier. I don't know.
Well, there's a very interesting point at which to take a break, and that's what we're going to do. We'll be back to continue with this roundtable discussion with the 4 candidates leading the Prince Edward Island political parties in just a moment. Now, there you go. There's an endorsement you probably didn't expect, Mr. Giz.